Welcome back to the Stay-at-Home Garden Lessons. So today we're going to go over what to do next. Hopefully you guys seeded some seeds last week with me, and now if you watered them and they stayed warm, you should have a few sprouts. So if we look at some of mine, we can see some of those little baby sprouts in there. I'm going to go over a few things. First, if you don't have any sprouts, that's okay. Maybe check on the seed packet. They might take 2 to 3 weeks to sprout, especially if you're doing something like I did with lavender. I'm just now seeing baby sprouts, and I actually seeded them a week before my last video. But if you were supposed to have things sprouting in a week or so, maybe think about what your practices were, and try seeding them again. And maybe watering them a little bit more, or making sure your seeds stay warm. First, we're going to talk about how it's okay that you may have failed. So your seeds may not have sprouted, or they sprouted and they died. I, in fact, myself had a few beautiful chard, and they were doing really well. But one night, because I have my plants on a heating mat to help encourage seed growth, I really should have taken them off the mat once they started to sprout, because they want their soil warm, but they also want sunshine and they don't want to get cooked. But I actually, in fact, fried some of my chard plants. But luckily for me, I do have some chard plants that survived, and I have plenty of space to reseed, and these things happen. Part of growing plants is failing and learning from those mistakes. That's actually a huge thing. If you always grow perfectly well and then one thing goes wrong, you won't know what to do. So it's okay to fail now when you have a few extra seeds and the time to do it, because it's still early. So we're not going to just talk about taking care of your plants. You want to make sure you watered them. You want to pay attention to them, see if they're drying out or if they're too wet. And if they've sprouted, you're going to want to make sure they have nice sunshine. So you're going to put it in a window so it's not getting full direct sunlight all day, but it's at least getting some filtered sunlight through the window for the majority of the day. Depending on your seed, of course. So if you have a shade tolerant plant, they may not want full day sunlight. So today we're actually going to talk about thinning your plants. So you might not do it quite yet, but you could if you're very confident in the growing. So if you look at this, in each little pocket for these chard plants, there's actually multiple growing. And that's not ideal in the end. It's great right now because that means I have a lot of options, especially since I fried my other chard. And you can either start thinning them now if you think that you're definitely going to do a good job of taking care of them. And I love that. That would be great, because you might even be able to pull them out with the root intact and transplant those tiny little baby plants that you're taking out. But you're going to want to make sure you have one plant that is for sure healthy and capable, and probably the biggest one in your tray. And you're going to want to leave that one. If there's extra plants growing around it, a bit small, you can either break their stem off or pull the whole root system out of the ground if you think it will not disturb the plant that you are trying to save. So I have an example of this. They're a little bit bigger, but there's 2 chard plants growing right here. And as much as I love having these plants grow, they're going to compete. So you do not want 2 plants growing in such a small space, because they're going to compete for nutrition, they're going to compete for water, they're going to compete for sunlight, and it will just stunt either both of them, or they both will not survive. So in the better interest, we're going to go and pick the favorite one. Which one looks the healthiest? I'd say to the right. So I'm actually just going to break off his stem, because they're kind of intertwined, and I don't want to pull this one out and ruin that one's roots. So in the end, I just keep one chard, and I'll take care of that chard, and this one can go to my chickens. So that is what the main interest today is, the main lesson. That is today's main lesson. So we're going to want to learn how to thin our plants. And if you have any questions and you want me to talk about this further, please comment below, and I have no problem going into more detail about this. And last, before I leave, something you're going to want to take a look at when you are checking out your plants, if they're thinning or just if they're starting to grow, and even if you just have one per planter section, is how tall are they? So some of mine are really tall over here. They're kind of stretching. It looks like they have a really long neck. And that's because I probably had them away from the sunshine a little too long. So we don't want our plants getting super, super tall with tiny little leaves. That means they're not getting enough sunlight, and you're going to want to get them closer to the sun. And so another thing you want to look at, if you're looking at these and they're actually leaning really hard over to, let's say, the right, that means they're searching for the sun. So you could even just turn it around. And the next day, they'll start leaning back over. So that's a good way to alternate if they are starting to lean. But again, you want to make sure their stem isn't so long and their leaves are so big. You really want to make sure that it's kind of a happy medium, because think about it. You want your roots nice and developed, equal with your stem, so it's nice and strong and it's not putting all of its energy into growing the stem. We want to make sure there's energy going into the stem and into the leaves. I think that's it for the day. My hens are telling me to be quiet, so I'll let you guys try it out and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.